to Scipoli. Today we're continuing on with the story of Aeneas. When last we left, Aeneas had spent a while wandering the eastern Mediterranean looking for a new home for his people. They encountered bad omens, they couldn't find a good way until they got all the way around Greece and got to that little Troy, where Helenus, the brother-in-law of Aeneas, basically told him exactly where he needs to go. He needs to go around Sicily, go to the west side of Italy, find the Tiber River, and settle there. As Aeneas is going, they decide to take the long route around Sicily. They're not going to face the terrible straits of Scylla and Charybdis, which you do end up seeing in the Odyssey. But they decide that they're going to stop at a couple places around the way. Sicily is not hostile to them. No one there hates them. It's around this time that things go really bad for Aeneas. He's already had a rough point. Troy has fallen. The first couple of attempts at building a city have failed. Don't forget that his wife died in the city of Troy. And then Aeneas' father passes on. This is a great source of pain to Aeneas because his father was someone that he looked up to, respected, loved very much. They had a really good father-son relationship, and Anchises was always very proud of Aeneas. But Aeneas decides that he's got to soldier on, he's got to keep going, and his people are very sympathetic to him. They love Aeneas up and down at this point. So they sail on, rounding Sicily and heading up north when, well, things are going to continue to go bad. You may remember from your study of the Trojan War that Juno, queen of the gods, really hates the Trojans. She had been involved in that beauty contest between her, Minerva, and Venus, and Venus ends up getting the apple of discord from a Trojan prince named Paris. So immediately, Juno and Minerva hate the Trojans, and Venus already kind of liked them and now really likes them. And when her son decides that she's going to go fight for the Trojans, well, that just makes the other two hate Aeneas specifically even more. Even though Troy has fallen, even though most of the Trojans are dead, the thing is, Troy was defeated by a trick. So Minerva is satisfied. She's done. Juno doesn't feel like she's really gotten even yet, though. And when she sees any Trojans still around, just the rage builds up inside. She decides that she's going to wreck the Trojan fleet right there, bend the laws of fate. She claims Jupiter does this all the time. And she goes down to this guy, Iolaus, who is a minor god and the warden of the winds. In the Odyssey, Iolaus gets, to look a lot nicer. Here, he's lonely. He's, a minor god who does exactly what Jupiter tells him to do all the time. And, well, Juno starts throwing her weight around. She actually kind of approaches this in sort of two ways at once, like carrot and stick at the same time. She offers to marry Iolaus off to one of the minor goddesses that serves her, if he does what she asks. And then when he says, okay, what do you want? She says, I want you to unleash all four winds at once. And she goes, and Iolaus absolutely wants no part of this. He says, Jupiter tells me never to unleash more than two of them at a time. I really can't do this. Juno points out she's the queen of the gods, and she can punish him and do it herself if she has to. And this is when Iolaus basically gives, this is not my problem. I'm under orders here. You take responsibility for this, and I'll do it. Fine. Can I still marry the girl? Yeah, sure. All four winds get released at the same time. Aeneas is sailing under smooth skies, all 20 of his ships around with him, and then suddenly day turns to night, the sky goes black, and these howling winds from every direction at once break out. It is the worst storm any of them have ever seen. Aeneas is immediately fighting for his life. In sailing ships, a storm is basically the most dangerous thing you can be in outside of actual combat. And it's a struggle, constantly moving sails up and down. Many people moving the steering oars and rudders and stuff like that, just trying to keep the ships straight. Aeneas actually sees one ship get caught on the side with a wave that capsizes it, knocks it over. He sees it upside down for a second, it sinks under, and then all he sees are pieces of wood and broken bodies floating back up. Aeneas has an extremely human reaction to this. His father has just died. He's gone through several years of misfortunes before that. He breaks down and cries on the deck of his ship. 10 years I fought at Troy. For my entire life, I've done everything I was supposed to do. I followed the gods. I respected my families. I made the sacrifices. I did what I was told. And now it's for nothing. The gods send me messages that I'm fated to succeed, that I'm going to make it to Italy and, found this new city, and then I'm going to be forgotten in the middle of the ocean. And he breaks down crying. Really interestingly, in the first video, I did mention that that the Aeneid starts in medias res. It starts right in the middle of things. This is where it starts. Aeneas is going to explain everything up to this point in a flashback coming up soon. Aeneas's mom is watching this. Venus is seeing this and goes, "Yeah, what gives? He is fated to succeed, and it looks very much like he's going to die in the middle of this terrible storm, where the tops of the waves are scraping the clouds and the bottoms of the waves are so low that you can see the ocean floor beneath it." And she goes to Jupiter and points all this out, and Jupiter takes a little bit of time to calm her down. He says Aeneas is fated to succeed, and that is not changing. He is going to be the progenitor, the grandfather, the ancestor of a race that will conquer the entire world and bring it to order. And that does mean he is going to survive this. Now, I could get involved, Jupiter says, but he looks down there and says, "You know what? I think another god has handled this already. This is all going to work out." Because what he saw there was, well, the other god with a very personal stake in where this is happening, deciding that he is not having any of this. Neptune, god of the sea, raises his head above the oceans, and by the strength of his character, and the fact that he is spitting mad, he can't even finish his sentences in the Latin, which is actually kind of interesting. Neptune yells at the winds, and by the force of his character and his authority, the winds stop. Virgil likens it to a respected man of authority showing up during a riot and calming everyone down. It tells a lot about the Romans that they have this idea that nature works on the same principles as their good government does, or at least what the Romans would call good government, but that's for another video. Neptune calms the waves down. The storm disappears. The winds go running back to their prison and lock themselves inside of it for fear of Neptune. And Aeneas stands up, realizes he's safe, that his prayers have been answered, and counts his ships. Right now, he's got the ship that he is on and 6 others out of the 20 he started with. They see land, and they drag the ships onto shore. People throw themselves exhausted onto the sand, and anybody who has any energy left starts building camp, making food, the kind of things that they need to do to get started. Aeneas actually shows quite how dangerous he is. Remember, the readers of the Aeneid have only seen him for for less than a book at this point. He starts hunting for people. He actually brings down 7 deer, huge deer, in one hunting trip, one for each of the ships. And he brings them back, and they make sacrifices, and they thank the gods for their lives. And Aeneas gives this famous line where he says, "You know, someday, even remembering what we have right now, will be helpful. We can make it through this. We've made it through the storms. We made it through Troy. We will do better again. We will be stronger again because of this. And remembering even this will help us." Aeneas goes exploring with one friend of his, a friend named Carthage, and they decide to go off into the woods and see what's going on. Venus, Aeneas' mother, visits him disguised as a huntress and explains that they are near a new city called Carthage. They've been blown clear across the Mediterranean and are now in North Africa. And she tells them the teeniest bit about Carthage, that it is unique in the ancient world and that it is run by a woman, a queen named Dido. We're going to get a little backstory about Dido right now, because she's got a lot of really interesting backstory. She was a queen of a different city called Tyre. That's Tyr, or Tyre, depending on how you like to pronounce it. And her husband, Sicilius, was king. The brother of Dido was named Pygmalion, and he wanted more than anything else in his life to be king. And this is always a very dangerous character in any kind of mythology. They always are very underhanded. Any brother or brother-in-law of the king, all they seem to want is to be king. I don't get it. Pygmalion poisons Sicilius, and when Sicilius dies, Dido goes into mourning. She's warned in a dream. She sees her dead husband, Sicilius, in a dream, telling her, "Get out of the city. I've hidden an enormous stash of gold outside of here, and you're not safe here. Your brother killed me, and he's going to try and kill you." Dido finds this huge stash of gold in secret, and then gathers a couple thousand people, and they leave the city by night on this huge wagon train, this huge caravan. They take all this gold with them, and they escape from Tyre with their lives, desperate, scared. After traveling for a couple of weeks, when they're almost out of their food, they come to another kingdom run by a king named Iarbas. Dido begs, well, not begs, she's a queen. Dido asks if they can buy some land from Iarbas. And she shows him a chest of gold and says, this is all we have. Iarbas looks at Dido and he says, well, there might be an alternate arrangement here. I'm a king. I'm looking to keep my kingdom going. But the thing is, I don't have a wife and I don't have any kids. If you and I were to marry, then you could have my whole kingdom and you wouldn't need to buy it. Dido is not impressed. She's still in mourning for her husband. She's still wearing all black, still making it very clear that she's not ready to get married. But she doesn't want to insult the guy. And she says, right now I'm in mourning. My husband was poisoned. I am forbidden by my oaths to marry again. Iarbas understands an oath, but the thing is, he is still kind of insulted. And he says, well, what, for that chest of gold, I'd give you as much as you could cover with the hide of an ox. And Dido says, do you swear? Do I swear what? And Dido says, do you swear that you'll give me everything I can encircle with the hide of that ox in exchange for this chest of gold? And Iarbas says, yeah, sure. She goes, will you swear in front of everybody? Absolutely. The next morning, Iarbas brings out a bull. Dido brings the huge chest of gold, and Iarbas swears in front of his entire kingdom that he will give Dido and her people as much land as they can encircle with the hide of this bull in exchange for that chest of gold. They swear it to Jupiter, they swear it to all the gods of Olympus, and they sacrifice the bull and they skin it. And then Dido takes an extremely sharp knife, and she has her steadiest-handed craftsman there cut one really long strip of bull hide going back and forth. It takes hours. They have miles of this thin cord. And Iarbas is sweating at this point. He had really figured that it was about as much land as you could put like a tent onto. And now Dido has miles and miles of cord. And the thing is, she's also smart. She's looked at maps. They're on a peninsula. So she puts the cord in one end of the cord into the water on one side and very carefully walks across the entire peninsula. And then, with her back to the peninsula, she makes sure she's on the side of the cord that she wants, looks over to Iarbas and says, I'll take this side. And now Iarbas is sworn to give this to her. If he tries to take it back by force or anything, he's breaking his oath. So furious, but utterly unable to do anything, he gives up. Mathematicians actually call this the Dido problem of how to encircle the largest possible area using a set perimeter, using a set like length of cord or fence or whatever like that. And well, they did it because Dido did it better than anyone else. Aeneas sees all this, and Aeneas actually doesn't hear all this. We, as the audience, know a bit more about this. What Aeneas sees when he, comes up to Carthage is he sees a city being built, and frankly, he's kind of jealous. He sees this new city coming up that and he's supposed to get a new city, build a new city, and right now, most of his friends are lost, and all he knows is that he's basically at the mercy of these people who got here before. He and his friend Achates look at each other, nod, and resolve to go into the city. And Venus covers them with sort of a mist, a cloud, that makes it so that other people can't see them or they just never give like a second look to them. Dido has built a temple first. This is a very common thing. You build something to the gods. Normally you go to Jupiter, the best and first god. But because Dido's a queen, she goes for the queen of the gods, Juno. And Aeneas sees Dido in there literally holding court, like telling people what to do, what your jobs for the day are, resolving disputes. And he looks around and sees that the walls of this place are covered with murals showing the Trojan War, and specifically the end of it, which was Juno's last big triumph. There's actually a mural of Aeneas himself getting hit in the hip with that big rock. And Aeneas waits here to see exactly what kind of queen Dido is going to be. Now, we're almost out of time for the video. Remember, the big things here is that Juno still hates Aeneas, that he's washed up here in Carthage with maybe 7 of the 20 ships that he'd started with. And now it's up to him to see what kind of queen Dido really is. See you guys in the next